New leaks and rumors about the 9th generation budget iPad have started to emerge online, and based on what I'm seeing from these leaks, I personally believe that a lot of people are totally wrong. So what I'm gonna do in this video is explain the specs and features that are most likely to come on the new iPad based on Apple's past release trends and just simple common sense. So before we get into that, let me show you all of those leaks. Back in November, iPad 9 rumors started by 000 Leaker on Twitter, claiming that Ming-Chi Kuo expects a new iPad 9 to be released in the second half of 2021 with an updated design. Then, in December, a report from Chinese website CN Beta claimed that the iPad 9 would come with an A13 chip, 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of base storage, and a 10.5-inch display with a starting price of $299, which is even lower than the current model. And then finally, just a couple of days ago, Mac Otakara claimed that the new iPad will feature a thinner, lighter design with a Touch ID home button and a Lightning port, but they expect the display size to remain the same 10.2 inches. So that's basically all that we've got in terms of leaks, and as you can tell, they're all conflicting with each other in one way or another. And I personally think a lot of those details are totally wrong. Let me explain. The first way I want to attack those rumors is by looking at what Apple's done with the budget iPad in the past. Apple's 5th generation iPad came with the old 9.7-inch display with a home button and a non-laminated display. Then with the iPad 6, Apple upgraded it with an A10 chip and Apple Pencil support, but they kept the same 9.7-inch display. The year after that, the iPad 7 kept the same exact A10 chip, but they added the smart connector and changed the design to feature a new 10.2-inch display. And then just a few months ago, Apple released the iPad 8, and the only difference was the upgraded A12 chip. That's literally the only change. So from all of that, there are a couple of different things that we can learn. Number one is that Apple has been updating their budget iPad every single year. And two, Apple has been extremely conservative with their year-over-year upgrades. And if you look at the trends from the past few iPads, Apple seems to have it on a tick-tock upgrade cycle. One year, they upgrade the design without changing the chip, and the next year, they upgrade the chip without changing the design. So if we assume that Apple will continue with this trend, then we can expect that the iPad 9 coming sometime this year will most likely stick to the same A12 Bionic chip, not the A13 like many of those leakers are claiming. And keep in mind that for a budget iPad, the A12 is definitely powerful enough. So that means that if Apple is not upgrading the chip this year, then they'll likely upgrade the design. So let's talk about what Apple can do with that. If we look at the history of the budget iPad, it was always taking hand-me-downs from the more expensive iPads in terms of technology. For example, it was the last larger sized iPad to get the smart connector, and it still has a cheap non-laminated display without P3 wide color gamut support. It still doesn't have an anti-reflective coating. It still has the most outdated A12 chip, and it still features a horrible 1.2 megapixel selfie camera. And of course, all of that makes sense because this is the budget iPad that we're talking about, priced at only $329. So based on that logic, we can expect the budget iPad line to be the very last to get updated with a new edge-to-edge display design, as we've already seen Apple do with the iPad Pro and the iPad Air 4. So based on what Apple has done in the past, the new iPad 9 will likely stick to the older home button design for at least one more year. And since they just updated the chip last year, Apple will probably update the design this year. So the big question is this: if they're not gonna give it the full flatback redesign, what exactly is going to change? In my personal opinion, it makes the most sense to give the iPad 9 the same exact body and 10.5-inch display as the iPad Air 3. This is the absolute easiest route for Apple to take since they already have all of the tooling and the internals ready to go. And as we already know, the iPad Air 4 uses a totally new design based on the iPad Pro. So Apple can simply take the iPad Air 3 and change nothing at all except for giving it a weaker A12 chip, and boom, there you go. That's the new iPad 9. It's gonna be just good enough to make it worth it, since the biggest downside of the iPad 8 is the non-laminated display that really sucks compared to the rest of the lineup, as well as the horrible selfie camera. Giving the iPad 9 the same design as the Air 3 will fix both of those issues, and it's going to be easy on Apple since it'll support the same keyboard cases that the iPad Air 3 supported. This is the path of least resistance, so I personally expect Apple to go this route. This would also mean that the Touch ID home button is staying, the Lightning port is staying, and the first gen Apple Pencil support is staying. Now, in terms of the specs and the price, I personally expect the iPad 9 to get the same 3 gigs of RAM with that A12 chip. I expect the storage to stick with the same 32 gigabytes at the base price, which you might disagree with, but if you think about it, the new iPad Air 4 comes with 64 gigs and it costs $600. Apple giving the budget iPad 64 gigs of storage would be really shocking, since I personally expect the price to stick to the same $329, which goes against those other rumors that we talked about, which claimed Apple would lower the price to $299. I completely disagree with them because I personally believe that Apple is attempting to raise the price of their entire iPad lineup. They did it with the redesigned iPad Pro in 2018. They did it with the redesigned iPad Air 4 just a few months ago, so to me, it makes the most sense to keep the price of the budget iPad at the same $329 until they finally give the iPad the modern flat back and side full redesign with support for the second gen Apple Pencil, which will be enough for Apple to justify raising the price to $399. Now, out of all of the speculations that I just made, there is only one thing that I'm unsure about: whether Apple intends to give the iPad the full redesign next year or 2 years from now. If you think about it, 2 years sounds like a very long time for it to stick with the old design, but then Apple would be staying true to their TikTok upgrade cycle of new design and then new chip. This would mean that next year's iPad would get the A14 chip with no other major changes, and then 2 years from now, it would finally get a full redesign but stick to the same A14 chip. But then on the other hand, what if Apple is planning to give it the full redesign next year so they can raise the base price? This would mean that they would be giving the iPad a new design 2 years in a row, which would be breaking the cycle since they would also need to update the chip at some point as well. So here's my theory for option number 2. What if Apple quite literally takes the iPad Air 3 with its A13 Bionic chip and 4 gigabytes of RAM and simply rebrands it as the iPad 9? This would by far be the easiest route to take, and it would allow them to fully redesign the iPad next year while keeping the same A13 chip on that new model. Those are the two options, and as of right now, I'm not really sure which one Apple is gonna go with. But with all of that said, the only remaining question is when the iPad 9 is gonna be released, so let's quickly answer that. For the past few years, Apple's budget iPads have been released in either September or March, with the most recent iPad 8 being released in September. And recent leaks are pointing to both the iPad Pro and the iPad Mini 6 to get released this upcoming March. So in my personal opinion, it doesn't make sense to release 3 out of the 4 iPad models all at the same time in March. So we can safely assume that the iPad 9 is probably coming this September, or at the very least, sometime this fall. So to finish off this video, here's a full spec list of what I expect for the 2021 iPad 9. So you can screenshot this if you'd like to share this with others. Now, if you totally disagree with me, go ahead and comment your thoughts down below. But if you enjoyed it, click that circle above to subscribe, and definitely watch those iPad leak videos right over there. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.